Hey guys, John Luxy here. So this is going to be a review of Scavenger SV-4, this game. And if you don't watch anything else in the video, two quick things. One, I do recommend this to just about everyone. Just about everybody that plays video games, with the exception of those that are like dude bros or those that don't really play a lot of games. If you're kind of a casual gamer, don't recommend it. But if you're a hardcore gamer, if you've played a lot of different genres, a lot of different varieties, you definitely need to check yourself out. Second, and maybe more importantly, do not look up anything about this game. Don't do any Google searches, don't read the reviews. Go into it as blind as you possibly can, because there are some genuinely interesting experiences that you will get spoiled on. Because you know how it is, you do a search and it pulls up the videos and they're all clickbait and they're like, how to avoid doing this and this and that, or how to deal with this and that. And it's like, you trust me, you do not want to spoil that for yourself. You could check out the Steam page. You could watch the trailer. It's not super accurate to what the game is, but it gives you a good idea. And then if you really want to, I think there's the manual somewhere. Maybe that's only after you purchase the game, but yeah. So do recommend, and don't spoil it for yourself. Now, what is Scavenger SV-4? So first off, it was released in 2018. It was released for $15. It's still $15 as of the time of this recording, and it is only on Steam, by the way. There are no other places that this game exists. It was done by one guy over the period of 5 years. So it is, man, it's hard to describe. It's basically an immersive sim that is somewhat roguelike, which sounds weird. So basically the premise is, that's your ship. You are a person in space that finds an alien planet, and it is so radioactive that you have to send your rover down and get samples, artifacts, whatever, and get as many as you can as far as you're comfortable with, because you are also being exposed to radiation. So it becomes this like risk versus reward scenario. Do you continue exploring the surface and getting more and more samples and doing more and more research and seeing what this planet has, or do you just get what you can as fast as you can and leave before you take too much damage? Now, we will do a quick little game, very quick, but you'll notice the high scores. There are scores. I don't want to go too much into the game because, like I said, it's more interesting for you guys to experience it yourself. But the high scores are basically, it's just a high scoreboard, your top 10 scores, and that determines the ending that you get. That's really all. That's really all that it is. It's your, effectively, the points that you get from the artifacts that you get, plus the research that you get, plus how much exploration that you get, and then times the percentage of your health. So the healthier you are, the bigger score that you get. And there's something like 100 different epilogues based on your score, which is really neat. Now, I mentioned it was somewhat roguelike. Basically, the guy set out to, and I think this is I'm not going to quote exactly, I'm going to paraphrase, but he was like, I could make a game that's 4 hours long, or I could make a 1 hour game that you can replay 100 times. And so he went for that. And by the way, I say that, he's saying that stuff because as of 2023, he is still active on the forums. I'm pretty sure he's going to watch this review. I'm pretty sure he reads every comment on the forums. And that's awesome. That is super awesome. What is going on in there? That's probably the actual inside of the ship. Now, what else? Just before we go in, let me kind of give you a very brief overview, Jesus Christ, I can't talk, of my experience playing the game to date. So I have 40 plus hours. And according to the dev, the average playtime is like 2.5. At 40 hours, there's times where I'm having less fun and times I'm having more fun. But I'm still finding stuff that I've never seen before. And so, I don't know if I mentioned this already, this might be one of the most immersive games I have ever played. And that's not hyperbole. There is so much detail in this game. There's really not a story. The story is more in like the arcade style of like, oh, you know, find the princess or whatever, except that is also procedurally generated, which is kind of interesting. It gives you a reason as to why you're here, or how, why and how. But there is so much detail in this game and all the different little things you can do. Half the time I'm just like, what else have I not seen? I really want to like look at everything and find all the little pieces and all the interactions and see what I could do. So at first it was, you know, enjoyment was high because I was like, man, this is a great game, all these different things. And then over the course of, you know, several hours, my enjoyment, that was probably about the 2.5 hour mark, if I'm being fair. Probably around there, my interest kind of got to the lowest point ever because I'm like, so what else is there? Is there a story? What's going on? And there's really not one. There is some lore, but not much of a story. I'm kind of curious why the music didn't repeat, but I guess that's not important. They probably would have expected that you would have already selected the game by this point, which is a smart assumption. I am not known for being smart, however, so we'll continue. Whatever. I'm semi-smart, I suppose. My enjoyment was probably at the lowest point. And then I was like, you know what? I've never used some of these items. Let me just start screwing around and seeing what I could do. And then the enjoyment went back up. And now it's kind of like, you know, more evened out as we progress. But that's what the game is for me now, is like just running around, coming across different artifacts, being like, what if I combine these? What can it do? And then lately I've been going on to the discussions in the Steam forums, and there's the general discussion, but there's also a war stories and spoiler section. And I go in there and I learn about stuff that I didn't even know you could do. And I was like, I have to see this for myself. Or I'm like, well, I want these 2 artifacts that I just never seem to get. And the dev responds and he's like, well, you don't need those 2. You could use these other ones instead. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize you could use it in that way. I didn't realize there was that level of depth to the game, to the interactions. And that's why I'm saying this is probably the most immersive game I have ever seen, because the dev wanted to make it so that if you could think of trying something to see what happens, he wants something to happen, which is phenomenal. So I have 3 big complaints about the game. One, and this is maybe the biggest one, the mouse cursor movement within these little sub windows. So I'm locked into this little window right here, and presumably it's because it's a different resolution, but it still moves as if I'm having to move all of this. Like the movement is scaled, if that makes any sense. So I'm moving it, and it's like, I don't know if that's mouse acceleration. I have no idea what that is, but it just feels very odd. And the feeling changes depending on the different side, because you click on different monitors in your ship. The feeling will change. So here, let's do a new game. It randomizes every time. That's why if you watch the trailer, it talks about, oh, I have this reoccurring dream. Because you could change the name of your ship. You could change your name. You could generate it again if you want. Changes the color, changes the stripes. We got blue, purple is good. Yeah, it just changes. Very, very minimal import. It's just something different, you know? But the color changes all the color of your monitors and highlights within the ship as well. So Let's begin. You can't actually feel radiation. The prickling is only your imagination. There is a bunch of these, and I'm not sure I've seen the same one, which is neat. So this is your starting room. Now, thankfully, the dev updated this so that you don't experience radiation in this room until you either leave or do something other than read your logs, which is like your beginning story. And this also is a little bit of procedural generation. The model isn't always here, and the photo, there's usually some kind of photo and some kind of model, although they're not always in this place. They might be in different places. You can't actually use the restroom. That's, oh, hey, Jack. A little bit, I suppose, disappointing. So let's click on this. And kind of what I mean is this is more full screen. This is, now that we're zoomed in. So this mouse cursor feels good. There's Jack. This feels normal, but sometimes it doesn't. A lot of the time it doesn't. You won't always get this zoomed in view. And that is probably my biggest complaint. Yes, I know there are settings in the options menu, but none of them feel right. So I just stick with kind of the default. And that's probably the biggest complaint. Now there's two others. One is this. So let's read this. Personal log of Captain L. Martin Allen aboard the ISC-66 Ascension. So I'm sitting at this bar on Novigrad, waiting for my supplier's next shipment to come through, when in comes this nervous academic kind of guy who walks up and sits down at my table. I'm thinking, excuse me? When he says, is my intention to make us both rich beyond measure. I gotta admit that made me smirk, but the cred stick he flashed convinced me he was two things, in possession of a lot of currency and sufficiently oblivious to display it in bad company. Really would have been a shame if one of the other hustlers at the bar had taken advantage of his trusting nature. I always record the agreements I make at places like this. It saves on later arguments, so I can quote this part exactly. I am, of course, Dr. Walter Eberhardt. Everyone of reasonable intellect, of course, knows that buried under all the disinformation and oft-repeated urban legends rampantly spread by the populace, 3 alien artifacts are actually known by humanity to exist. All 3 are thoroughly documented. The social repercussions of their discovery were huge. For 50 years they monopolized the public's imagination, but 100 years after the last one was found, with no further discoveries forthcoming in the matter, even such a spectacular development faded slowly into the background. Come on, cut to the chase, I interrupted. I know where to find more, he says. So we're going to read the rest of this. There's, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages left. However, my complaint, thanks for the cat hair on my nose, Jack. My complaint is that this is, it's the same framework. I see this one regularly. It just usually changes the names. It changes some of the writing. It'll change the number of the, oh, there's 3 factually confirmed alien artifacts. It changes that number to 5, 7, whatever. That, I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate the procedural generation of even this, but I see them regularly, and it's fine. This isn't even the main focus of the game, but I want more. So that's 2 out of the 3 complaints, and you can tell they're all minor so far. They're pathetic, they're nitpicky, and I'm fine with that. That's what I'm talking about. The game is really interesting otherwise. Okay, so he had quite the shopping list to outfit the ship for this expedition. A surface rover set up as a remotely controlled drone, a crane to lift it up, cargo handling racks for the ship, a top-of-the-line auto dock. I had to pull the second bunk to make room for it all, so we'll have to sleep in shifts. Took the better part of a week to put it all together, and of course the whole time this academic nerd is being an impossible perfectionist, insufferably arrogant or condescending, or both. I'm about fed up with him, and we haven't even undocked from Novigrad yet. The pay is substantial, but I'm starting to wonder if I've made a mistake regardless. And I know this is already longer than I expect, but I'm not going to show much of the game. I'm not even going to wander around the ship very much because I want you guys to experience, 'experience as much as possible for yourself. We finally set out this morning. It if you've played FTL, my experience with FTL was I played the demo, and doing the tutorial of the demo, the ability to remotely open and close the doors on the ship, and I was like, I gotta get this game. It's similar to this. Tiny little things, I'm like, oh my god, this game is amazing. Because you just don't see that level of detail in even AAA games. And yes, it looks generic, and yes, I guess that would be another complaint, where it's grossly unoptimized. I'm still okay with that, though, because it is so worth playing. It's so worth the experiences. So we finally set out this morning. Nerd says we'll find a hellishly radioactive planet out on the unsurveyed rim. How he thinks he knows that, I have no idea. I fully expect to find empty space, and I look forward to hearing him have to apologize for a change. I've been spending a lot of time in atmospherics just to get a little peace and quiet. What's really kind of interesting is this personal log, you sometimes get the other guy, where you're the other guy, you're the nerd. And, various things happen. So it's kind of neat. What I mean is there's different stories. It's just kind of neat to me that you can see the same thing with different outcomes from different perspectives. Anyway, I just got a 2-hour lecture about comparative off-world geology while in atmospherics. I think I'm going to need to suit up and go on an EVA outside the ship next time. We're finally getting close enough to pick up something on the long-range sensors. There is, in fact, a planet where the nerd predicted, a fact which he is crowing about continuously. Perpetual overcast, I'm pretty sure it never breaks. Intense radiation, I'm glad now for the autodock. We're going to get a bad dose, even in high orbit. I've been picking up a lot of radio noise, but some of it might be signals, too. Not a thing I can understand, though. This is starting to get real interesting. Had an argument with the nerd while prepping the rover. He insisted the split on the take was 70-30, not the 50-50 we shook hands on. I played back the recording of us making the deal, and he went off on some kind of angry, long-worded tangent I couldn't follow. I think he might be off his rocker. So I'm just sitting there in quarters, minding my own business, when the nerd comes out of storage with a funny look in his eye. Crazy bastard tried to brain me with a goddamn wrench. I guess he decided he didn't want to split the profits from this anyway at all, now that we're out here. Long story short, I spaced his corpse out the airlock, the autodock patched up my head, and I'm in a high orbit around the planet and ready to deploy the rover. And I guess I won't have to split the profits either. I'm not going to go back to the menu. There's other things in there. There's just a little game and music. Alright, so as soon as we leave the room, bam, we're exposed to radiation. You can kind of see the planet. We have a little console so we can click on this. And let's go ahead and establish communications with the rover. This is the rover. We can look around. And then let's launch it. And this is one of the reasons why I was like, this game is so freaking cool. We can spin our turret around. We can see the outside of the ship. We can see the planet. I just want to point out to you that it's in color right now. The camera, I mean. Right? Everything's in color. Up here it says burning retrograde, planetfall ETA, 53 seconds. It's counting down. You can watch the rover land and take off. And if you were to go when it's going in or coming out, you can actually go over here and watch it leave and then go down to the planet. That's what I mean. That's what I mean about this game. And here we go. Now, because I've never done this before, I'm just going to end the orbit and end the expedition. So this is what I mean. You choose generally. You choose when to end the expedition. Sometimes you just die, and then the choice is taken from you. But you can also notice the sound is 3D as I'm moving around. That's the engines, by the way. It's quiet up here, but if you go to the back of the ship and stand between the engines, it'll be loud. There's no music unless you turn on the little music player. And that's basically it. So let's just leave the thing there. Astrogation, confirm course. This ends the expedition, cannot be undone. And then we'll get a little epilogue based on the score. It'll probably be negative. I expect it to be negative because we didn't do anything and we lost the rover. Yep, final score, negative 240. Epilogue, L. Martin Allen. The rover's treads were barely dirty with the dust of the planet's surface. L. Martin Allen confined his exploration to the area immediately surrounding the initial landing zone, hardly scratching the surface of what the planet might contain. The rover was abandoned, left behind on the planet's surface. No physical objects were retrieved from the planet. During his encounter, he exposed himself to no appreciable radiation damage. Everything you do, or, well, you know, if you experience certain things, it talks about it. It's like, oh, you explored a large quantity of the planet. You found this number of artifacts. You did this. You know, if you beat the game in your quarters, during which you're taking radiation damage the whole time as well, if you beat that game, it gives you a little note in here about beating that little game. And then it gives you the epilogue based on your score. L. Martin Allen did not like the look of the whole situation and promptly returned to Omega Station, where the data from the Ascension's flight recorder proved his claims of discovery. The sale of the coordinates and orbital survey data paid for the fuel and consumables. He will let some other fool risk their lives. He tells himself that discretion is the better part of valor, and he might be right. Still, the ominous beauty of the alien planet filling the Ascension's windows haunts his dreams. So there you go, exploration 230. So we got a little bit. Rover lost, minus 500. Starring equipment, 30. Because you get score for all the stuff. And the starting equipment is some of the stuff. Research 0, perfect health, moot. If you have like half health, then you take a 50% score reduction, right? Final score, negative 240. And that's it. Of course, you could do way better. But you could do way worse. So. But anyway, guys, that is it for this review. A little bit longer than I wanted, but I feel like I touched on everything I did want to. So I'm okay with that. Oh, did I mention the third point? Or third negative? Technically fourth. No, I didn't. The third, or fourth negative, if you will, is that there is... I mentioned lore, and I mentioned no real story. Basically, there's lore for the planet, and there is 4 different ones. And that's all. And I want more, you know, and that's, there are, so the interesting thing as well is, since it's procedurally generated, you're not going to get the same things every time. And with each lore background of the planet, there's certain sets of items associated with that, and there's a lot of overlap. But you won't be able to get all of them in a run. And sometimes I want to find some of the other stuff. And sometimes I just want more things. So that's it. That's kind of my petty, nitpicky negatives. Like I said, completely recommend the game, especially if you have a history of gaming. If you're a dude bro, pass on this one. You're not gonna like it. Well, you might. You might. And like I said, it is probably the most immersive game I've ever played. Reminds me a lot of actually Subnautica and also Iron Lung because of the screen, I guess. maybe even games like Deus Ex where you could do all this weird stuff with all the different items. But yeah, even just walking around the ship and observing it in action is really neat. And they mentioned the airlock. You can open the door to space and get yourself sucked out and die, and it'll let you do that. And I did that because I'm a moron. I'm like, well, let me open this thing. And I did, and it's like, yep, you're dead. Because, you know, it assumes you know what you're doing. Not like, are you sure you want to do that? It's like, oh, you want to open? Okay. And that's what I mean. Like, half the fun is just trying all the different toys and seeing what things do. But that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time and attention. I really do appreciate it. Really hope you guys enjoyed this episode or this video. Let me know what you guys think. I mean, what are... No spoilers, please, in the comments, though. Just let me know if you have played the game. Did you like it? What did you think? Like I said, avoid spoilers at all costs, because this game, especially when you're learning what things do and when you don't know what they're capable of, you're like, okay. So that's why I've been incredibly vague on purpose. So, till next time, guys, take care.